Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The face-off continues between India and Pakistan. It's drill versus drill and video versus video. The Indian Navy is test-firing missiles in the Arabian Sea. It has issued a warning to Pakistani ships. Enter at your own peril. We'll discuss India's military preparations and how it's part of a three-pronged strategy. In Pakistan, politicians are losing the plot. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is now laying claim to the legacy of the Indus civilization. Amid these tensions, Pakistan also faces a canal crisis. We'll tell you how water could prove to be Islamabad's Achilles heel. Here in India, the hunt continues for the Pahalgam terrorists. But why is it taking so long? We'll decode the challenges. Also on the show, Elon Musk has moved out of the White House. He's among the first to exit Trump 2.0. In Australia, elections are happening tomorrow. We'll tell you the key issues and projections. And the CIA is using social media to recruit Chinese spies. All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Israel says it has intercepted 2 missiles fired from Yemen within 12 hours. An explosion was heard over Jerusalem. The Houthis have claimed responsibility for one of the attacks. The Iran-backed group said they fired a hypersonic ballistic missile towards Israel. The Houthis have launched dozens of attacks on Israel since the Gaza war began in 2023. Big setback for Germany's far-right party, Alternative for Germany, or AfD. The country's domestic intelligence service designates it as a right-wing extremist group. This will give the authorities more power to monitor the party and fuel calls for it to be banned. The AfD says the move is a heavy blow to democracy. The European Union fines TikTok $600 million, accuses it of sending personal data of Europeans to China. This is one of the largest fines ever imposed by the authority. TikTok says it will appeal against the decision. The Chinese-owned social media giant is also facing a potential ban in the US. Thailand urges calm after the first anthrax death in the country in more than 3 decades. A second infection has already been confirmed. Health officials warn people against eating raw meat. Anthrax spreads through bacteria in the soil and commonly infects grazing livestock and wild animals. And in India, heavy rains and dust storms disrupt life in the national capital region. At least 4 people killed and several injured in rain-related incidents. This morning, around 200 flights were delayed and many parts of the capital were waterlogged. Tensions are simmering at the India-Pakistan border. We've got daily ceasefire violations, drills and threats, hotline conversations and diplomatic offensives. India has made its intention quite clear. It is waiting for the right moment to strike back. In the meantime, the military is preparing. India's Navy is holding drills off the Arabian Sea coast. They're firing anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles. Several rounds have already been completed. The latest is from April 30th to May 3rd. The Navy has designated an area for this drill. It is located just 80 to 85 nautical miles from Pakistan's warships. They too are holding drills in the region. So India is asking them to stay clear of the area. Let me quote what one officer said about this. "We have made it clear that if any warship or ship that enters that zone, she will do so at its own peril." That's a very clear warning to Pakistan. Stay away from our path. Pakistan's Navy has also issued a notification for missile firing. Now, this is their 4th notification in the past week. But so far, they haven't fired anything. Only warnings, no missiles. What they have done is release a video. It shows a montage of Pakistan's naval drills. Take a look at this. India has test-fired missiles. Our warships are equipped with BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles. Multiple live firings have been done so far. The Indian Air Force is also stepping up. Last week, we saw the Akraman military drills. India's Rafales and Sukhois practiced ground strikes over the central part of the country. Today, we saw another impressive display. Indian fighter jets flew over the state of Uttar Pradesh. They landed on an expressway there. Take a look at this. Why an expressway? Think of it as a backup option. Say the enemy destroys your air bases. You will still need to land and operate your warplanes. Enter expressways. Some of these roads are equipped to land fighter jets. Uttar Pradesh already had 3 such runways. This is the 4th one. And unlike Pakistan's Air Force videos, this is all legit. It is not lifted from a video game. It is not cropped from a SpaceX rocket launch. The Indian Air Force actually did all of this. These videos are part of a larger strategy. Most countries deploy it nowadays. They show off their military prowess with videos of drills. It's a bit like boxers preparing for a match. Most of them post videos of their training regimen. The idea is not to entertain people. The idea is to deter your rival, to show them what they're up against. India is doing this on 3 fronts. You've got missile drills in the Arabian Sea, air drills in central and northern India, and retaliation along the line of control. Like I said, Pakistan has been firing across the LOC. Yesterday marked the 8th consecutive night of ceasefire violations, and India is responding in kind. These military moves are one part of India's 3-pronged response, arguably the most important one. Home Minister Amit Shah made that clear yesterday. He promised to hunt down and punish the Pahalgam terrorists.
कश्मीर में जो आतंकवाद चला रहे हैं, उनके खिलाफ जीरो टॉलरेंस का नीति है। और आज वो ये न समझ ले कि हमारे 27 नागरिकों का जान लेकर ये लड़ाई जीते हो, कि लड़ाई का अंत नहीं है। हर व्यक्ति को चुन चुन कर जवाब भी मिलेगा, जवाब भी लिया जाएगा।
So that's the first part, hunting the terrorists and preparing a military response. The second part of India's response is diplomatic. India has reached out to 100+ countries. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar himself has spoken to at least 10. The goal is to build a campaign against Pakistan, to isolate Pakistan on the world stage. And finally, the third part of India's response, choking Pakistan's economy. Reports say India will push for Pakistan's return to the FATF grey list. The FATF, as you would know, is the Financial Action Task Force. It has 40 member countries. Its job is to crack down on money laundering and terror financing. If you're in the grey list, you will be under scrutiny. Your foreign investments, your multilateral loans, all of it will be heavily regulated. Pakistan used to be on the FATF grey list for terror financing, but thanks to China and Turkey, they exited the list in 2022. Now, India is hoping to put them back on that list. India is also putting pressure on the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, or as Pakistan calls it, their credit card. The IMF has approved yet another bailout for Pakistan. It's their 24th IMF bailout program since independence. 24 programs, the highest number for any country anywhere in the world. This one is worth $7 billion. But India could be planning to oppose it. And the concern here is quite obvious. None of this money is reaching Pakistanis anyway, so chances are it is being used to fund terrorism. Of course, India alone may not be able to do this. Our voting share at the IMF is only 2.75%, but that's where diplomacy is so important. New Delhi must build a global campaign against Pakistan. cut off their political support, choke their financial bailouts, and then cripple their terror networks. If you've covered South Asia long enough, you begin to recognize the pattern. Terror strikes India, civilians die, and suddenly Pakistan becomes the victim. Its generals thunder, its politicians beat their chests, its proxies and partners parrot the same old lines. And this time was no different. In fact, this time, the circus had more performers than usual. First up is Pakistan's Army Chief, General Asim Munir. On Thursday, he was in Jhelum, with boots on the ground. The optics were classic. Choreographed war games and carefully curated photo ops, standing on military tanks. But that wasn't enough. Asim Munir needed some headlines, so he reached for the script. He said, and I'm quoting, "Any misadventure by India would be met with a notched-up response." These were his words. Basically, if India hits back, Pakistan hits harder. That's what he said. It's textbook bravado and nothing new for Asim Munir. After all, he's the same man who called Kashmir Pakistan's jugular vein. So this is right up his alley. But Asim Munir seems to have tough competition from another man, and that is Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the OG Nepo baby of Pakistani politics. At one point, he was the country's foreign minister, but now he cannot seem to make up his mind. Is Pakistan the villain or is Pakistan the victim? Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is confused. Look at his latest statements. First, Bilawal threatened India over the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty. He said the Indus belongs to Pakistan. Either the Indus water will flow or it will be the blood of Indians.
भारत को कहना चाहूंगा कि सिंधु हमारा है और सिंधु हमारा रहेगा। या इस दरिया से हमारा पानी बहेगा या उनका खून बहेगा।
A few days later, Bhutto was beating the war drums again. Again, over the Indus Waters Treaty, he invoked the Indus Valley civilization. He painted himself as its heir. And he warned India against touching the rivers.
हम जंग नहीं चाहते, मगर वो सिंधु पे हमला करे तो उनको मालूम है कि या इस सिंधु से पानी बहेगा या खून बहेगा।
But then, in an interview today, he changed tack. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari was speaking to Sky News, and he admitted what Pakistan has long tried to bury: the country's long-time links to terrorists. Bilawal says Pakistan has suffered because of its own choices and that Pakistan needed reforms. Well, is it an honest statement? Maybe. But it also raises a question. Which Bilawal is the real one? Is it the one who wants reforms? Or is it the one who thinks that rivers and rhetoric will rewrite geography? And while Bilawal was changing his stance, there's one man who knows what he wants: Maulana Fazlur Rahman, the chief of Jamaat-e-Ulema-e-Islam. He had a surprisingly different take. First, he hit out at the Pakistan army for the tensions. Then he said, fight with India all you want, but do not open a second front with Afghanistan. Why? Because the nation won't support it. Well, he's not wrong technically. Pakistan is not equipped to handle one burning border, let alone two. So the cleric is asking Islamabad to not tempt fate. But not all his namesakes are of the same opinion. We're talking about General Fazlur Rahman. He is a retired Bangladeshi general. And he went rogue on Facebook. He suggested that if India ever attacks Pakistan, Bangladesh should occupy the northeast. India's northeast. He's saying Bangladesh should occupy it. He also floated the idea of forming a joint axis with China. Now, it's hard to tell what this is. Is it delusion, fantasy, or just plain madness? But it does tell us something about the whole situation. The poison Pakistan spreads is contagious. It is now poisoning the subcontinent. Also, just when you thought that things could not get worse, there was Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Part-time Khalistani, full-time viral video creator. Pannu too had a warning for India. If it attacked Pakistan, Punjab would be liberated. Now let's pause here for a second. Pannu is cheering for Pakistan, the same Pakistan that forced thousands of Sikhs into exile during partition. Why is he speaking for them? You see, Pannu is Pakistan's favorite houseplant. They water him occasionally to make sure that he's always available to play the separatist card. And that is exactly what he's doing, making some noise. The problem here is that all these people mistake noise for power. This isn't just about one general or one politician, it's about a whole ecosystem. Pakistan is in a rot, and when states fail to fix themselves, they hunt for demons. India is the easiest one to conjure. At the end of the day, this show of power is just a performance. And Pakistan should know that sooner or later, even the biggest run and the best run circus runs out of applause.
India responds in a way that doesn't lead to a broader regional conflict.
So Pakistan is talking about spilling blood. What is the rest of the world doing? They're asking India to calm down. The latest on the list is US Vice President J.D. Vance. He was in India when this attack happened. He was here. He says India should respond without triggering a regional conflict.
Our hope here is that India responds to this terrorist attack in a way that doesn't lead to a broader regional conflict. And we hope, frankly, that Pakistan, to the extent that they're responsible, cooperates with India to make sure that the terrorists, sometimes operating in their territory, are hunted down and dealt with.
Well, that's not up to India, is it? New Delhi is responding to an attack on its people. It is not the aggressor here. It is simply retaliating. But credit where it's due, J.D. Vance did not request India to not attack. He acknowledged that India has a right to hit back. Now look at the second part of his statement. And I'm quoting here. We hope that Pakistan, to the extent they're responsible, cooperates with India to make sure that the terrorists sometimes operating in their territory are hunted down and dealt with. That's the statement. So many caveats there. Pakistan, to the extent that they are responsible, and terrorists sometimes operating from Pakistan. In other words, America still does not sound convinced, even if they know the truth. They want to support India, but they won't call out Pakistan. Yesterday, the US defense chief also reached out to India. His name is Pete Hegseth. He spoke to India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. Let me quote the Indian readout from that conversation. Secretary Hegseth said that the US stands in solidarity with India and support India's right to defend itself. It is very similar to what J.D. Vance has said. Washington is not opposing India's retaliation. They're trying to contain it. And this is familiar territory for Trump officials. Donald Trump was president in 2019 as well. That's when India carried out the Balakot airstrikes. Back then, Trump officials tried to diffuse the tensions. The president briefly hinted at this during a podcast last year. He talked about offering help to Prime Minister Modi. And Trump claimed that Modi rejected the offer. Apparently, he said he could handle it himself, which frankly sounds about right. India is not asking other countries to fight for us. We are not asking them to send us weapons. All we are saying is, don't come in the way. If you can't work with us, do not work against us. Unfortunately, no one is listening. These US officials talk about standing with India, yet they keep arming Pakistan. If fighting breaks out, what is Pakistan's most lethal weapon? The F-16 fighter jets. And who supplies and maintains these jets? It's the Americans. In February, Trump approved a military package for Pakistan. It was worth around $400 million. And what was it for? To maintain Pakistan's F-16s. This is the same Trump who cut aid to the whole world. He ended funding for hospitals and for research. But the same Donald Trump gave $400 million to Pakistan. This is the double game that America plays. Washington wants closer ties with India. So yes, they talk about solidarity. But New Delhi must be clear-eyed about their intentions. If the US is serious, here's what they must do. First of all, call out Pakistan. J.D. Vance wants to know the extent of Pakistan's role. Well, we'll tell him it's the full extent. Secondly, stop arming Pakistan. You talk about India's right to defend itself, but on the other side are your fighter jets. And America is not the only guilty party here. Most countries do the same thing. They condemn the terror attacks, they stand in solidarity with India, but they stop short of blaming Pakistan. It is time for India to accept this reality. Yes, you must try to build political consensus, but don't pin your response on that. A powerful country does not need sign-offs from others. It responds, even if alone. 10 days ago, terror struck Pahalgam. 26 tourists were killed. 4 terrorists carried out the attack. Then they vanished into the forests. The resistance front claimed responsibility, then denied it. It's been 10 days, but the attackers are still at large. And one question is burning in every Indian's mind. Why haven't we tracked them down yet? Indian security forces have been deployed in full strength, from drones to thermal imaging to intelligence grids. Everything is in place. So what is taking so long? There could be 3 reasons. First is the terrain. Pahalgam's landscape is breathtaking, but it's also unforgiving. There are deep ravines and steep ridges. Patrolling them is no easy task. The forest cover is thick. Visibility is barely 10 meters in most areas. Here, drones struggle to navigate the vegetation. So each cave, each boulder, and each bush needs to be inspected manually. You can see why this can be time-consuming. And that's the first challenge. What's the second? The civilians. There are millions of people in Jammu and Kashmir. Their safety is the priority. Security forces have been repositioned to crowded areas. A full-blown military operation could lead to panic. So everything has to be done quietly. That's point number 2. Now let's talk about the third reason, which is also the most important. It is the manhunt itself. Let's look at how the situation unfolded. After the attack, the initial intelligence was patchy, and this proved costly. By the time reinforcements arrived, the terrorists had slipped away. Thousands of troops are now combing the area, but the attackers remain elusive. Why is that? Perhaps because of local support. Hundreds have been detained for questioning. 90 of them are reportedly overground workers. These are people who may have helped the Pahalgam attackers, like giving them shelter or providing intel about Indian forces. They're all being questioned. And here's what the initial investigation has revealed. The attack was not a hit and run. It was planned meticulously. The terrorists scouted Pahalgam for a week. They narrowed down 3 tourist spots. Eventually, they picked the Baisaran Meadow because it is only accessible by foot. They knew that Indian forces would take time to respond, and their exit routes gave them a lead in the chase. Indian agencies say overground workers helped in mapping the escape, and the attackers are no ordinary bunch. This group is being led by a former SSG commando, basically a special forces soldier of the Pakistan army. He is leading this bunch of terrorists, somebody with years of training in jungle and mountain warfare. Indian officials say the terrorists are self-reliant. They have food and water and satellite-linked encrypted communications, so the attackers could stay hidden for days. Or worse, they could blend in with the locals. And this would complicate the operation for India. But the Indian forces have been making headway. They have located the attackers at least 4 times. An exchange of fire has been reported. This happened 4 days ago on the 28th of April. Latest reports say the terrorists are now in Anantnag, which is about 40 kilometers from Pahalgam, and the attackers are taking advantage of the terrain. Security officials say tracking them is like finding a needle in a haystack. Also, this is not the first time that terrorists have escaped into dense forests. Something similar happened last year, in 2024. Terrorists attacked a bus carrying Hindu pilgrims. This was in Jammu's Riyasi district. 9 people were killed in that attack. At least 41 others sustained injuries. The terrorists fled the scene. They were never traced. There are more such incidents, in fact. In 2023, terrorists attacked a village in Jammu's Rajouri district. 7 people were killed in this attack. The attackers were identified, but they too were never found. So 3 attacks, all in Jammu and Kashmir, and no signs of the terrorists. Do you know what's the common factor in all of these cases? All these attacks were carried out by the resistance front, the same TRF. Clearly, there is a pattern. Finding the attackers may take days, even weeks. Every inch of the forest is being searched, and the clock is ticking. These terrorists cannot be allowed to regroup or, worse, strike again. Security is not Pakistan's only worry. A bigger worry could be water. And I'm not talking about the Indus Water Treaty suspension. I'm talking about their canal project. It has triggered massive protests in some parts of Pakistan. It is also pitting two provinces against each other, Sindh and Punjab. So what's so controversial about it? First, some background. Pakistan is an agrarian country. Agriculture makes up 25% of its GDP. It also employs around 37% of their population. Yet, productivity is low. Pakistan does not produce enough food to feed its own people. It ends up importing food from abroad. In 2023, they spent $9 billion on food imports. A weak economy cannot afford that. So the government unveiled a new project, the Green Pakistan Initiative. This project has a budget of more than $3 billion. Its biggest component is building canals, specifically 6 of them. The plan was to expand cultivation to new areas. And to do that, you need water. You need canals. But one of the proposed canals triggered a storm. It was intended to deliver water to a region called Cholistan. This is located in the Punjab province. Almost 90% of it is desert land. Pakistan says the canal will use flood water released by India. But the people of Sindh do not buy it. They live downstream on the Indus River, so they believe the canal water will come at their expense. Add to this provincial tensions. Sindh has always detested Punjab's domination of Pakistan, whether it's in the politics or films or cricket. So the whole thing blew up into a major flashpoint. Protesters blocked highways in the region. Dozens of trucks and containers were stuck with their cargo. And in several places, things turned violent. Take a look at this. Politics also played a role here. Sindh is home base for the PPP, that's the Pakistan People's Party. Punjab is home base for the Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz Sharif's party. Now, both these parties are in coalition. But the PPP threatened to walk out over the canal issue. That too in the middle of tensions with India. So Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif had no other option. He decided to put the project on hold. On hold, not cancelled. Chances are he will wait for this tense period to pass. Either way, the big picture is clear. Pakistan is heading towards a major water crisis. How major depends on India. As you know, New Delhi has suspended the Indus Waters Treaty. It could now build more infrastructure on the Indus, more dams and more canals. And this would reduce the water available to Pakistan. It could cripple Pakistan's economy. The Indus irrigates 90% of Pakistan's crops, 90%. The country has 21 hydroelectric plants. All of them are located on the Indus River. If India decides to leverage this, Pakistan will feel the pinch. Same with trade. Pakistan depended on India for key items like medicines, vegetables and poultry feed, basically things that directly impact the people. If India does not sell them, Pakistan will have to look elsewhere. Of course, nowhere will be as close as India, which means they will have to spend more time and more money in getting these essentials. And do not forget, these are just the new troubles. Pakistan was already under severe economic strain. At first, their GDP was projected to grow by 3.2% in 2025. That forecast was cut to 3% in January and again to 2.6% last week. This is a country that lives from loan to loan. There is no long-term economic plan. So forget financing a military confrontation. Pakistan should focus on feeding its people first. As tensions escalate, India and Pakistan have closed their airspaces to each other. Flights are now longer, costlier and chaotic. Airlines are burning both fuel and cash. Passengers are staring at costlier tickets. Indian airlines say they could lose millions if this drags on for a year. The Pakistani airline industry faces worse. Their national carrier is already in a shambles. They will bleed cash to fly east. They will also lose millions in overflight fees from Indian carriers. Remember, the same thing happened in 2019 post the Balakot airstrikes when Pakistan shut its airspace for months. While Indian airlines adapted to new routes, Pakistan lost upwards of $100 million. Now, history is repeating itself, but the stakes are higher because this is not just about planes. It is about power, pressure, and politics. Our next report has more.
As tensions escalate between India and Pakistan, both countries have closed their airspaces to each other. What this means is that Indian airlines cannot fly over Pakistan if they're flying west, that is, to the US, Europe or West Asia. Instead, they will have to fly around Pakistan's airspace and choose the flight path over the Arabian Sea. At the same time, Pakistani airlines cannot use Indian skies to fly east. So, Pakistani flights to Southeast Asia or Bangladesh now have to be rerouted north of India. Essentially what this means is that flights will now become more expensive and longer. Indian airlines are already bleeding both fuel and cash. Air India estimates that it may lose up to $600 million if the airspace closure drags on for a year. Meanwhile, Indigo, Akasa Air and Air India have had to reroute more than 1,200 international flights scheduled from New Delhi to the west after Pakistan shut its airspace. These flights are now an hour and a half longer. However, aviation analysts say only Indian flights from Delhi will be affected, while most of India's international flights will not face any trouble.
तो हमारे देश से जो नॉर्थ रीजन है, जैसे दिल्ली का हिस्सा है, वो फ्लाइट्स को घूम के गुजरात से अरेबियन सी के रास्ते से होते हुए यूएई के रास्ते से होते हुए आगे वेस्ट बाउंड जाना है. तो बाकी जो पेनिनसुला है हमारे देश का, जैसे गुजरात से, मुंबई से, अहमदाबाद से, हैदराबाद, चेन्नई, बेंगलुरु, इन सब जगहों की फ्लाइट्स पे जो भारत से ओरिजिनेट होती है कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
So how about Pakistan? How is India's airspace ban affecting them? Despite Pakistan's aviation industry being almost dead, they will still lose millions of dollars. Pakistan's international airline, which operates flights to Southeast Asia and Bangladesh, will now have to fly around India. The new route from Pakistan's capital Islamabad to Bangladesh's capital Dhaka is now 3 hours longer. Apart from this, Pakistan will also lose out on overflight fees from Indian airlines. Overflight fees is a common revenue source for countries where any aircraft flying over the country has to pay money to avail air traffic controller services. Currently, Pakistan is losing $120,000 every day in overflight fees from Indian carriers. Analysts say if Pakistan keeps its airspace closed for the next 5 months, the country would lose upwards of $100 million. Now, the airspace closures aren't new. In fact, every time tensions escalate between the two countries, Pakistan is the first to shut its airspace. That's because the Balakot airstrikes of 2019 still haunt Islamabad. That's when the Indian Air Force bombed terror camps inside Pakistan, the first such airstrike on Pakistani soil since the 1971 war. In retaliation, Pakistan shut its airspace for almost half a year and lost millions of dollars in overflight fees. But let's look beyond the economics. Airspace has become a geopolitical front. India's measures show a zero-tolerance approach towards Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. The Pahalgam terror attack has reopened old wounds. As both nations dig in, flyers are bracing for costly tickets, while airlines are battling to stay afloat.
The thing with Donald Trump is, you never know when the hammer is going to fall. No one does, not even the guy swinging it. We saw it during his first term. His cabinet turned into a revolving door. People in, people out. You blink and suddenly they were gone. This time, things felt a little different. For the first 100 days of Trump 2.0, things felt calmer, more stable. But here we are, Season 2, Episode 102, and the first heads have rolled. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and First Buddy Elon Musk, they are both out. What led to this? We'll start with Mike Waltz. The former congressman was appointed the National Security Advisor of the US, but from the beginning, he was on thin ice. He did not work well with the rest of the cabinet. He berated White House officials. He was dismissive of Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. Waltz was not a team player, and that irked many in the Trump administration. But what sealed his fate was Signalgate. On March 11, Mike Waltz added Jeffrey Goldberg to a Signal chat. He's the editor-in-chief of a news magazine called The Atlantic. Goldberg first thought that it was fake. But then he found himself inside a war room, a group chat with 18 senior Trump officials openly discussing an attack on the Houthis in Yemen. In fact, the airstrikes were confirmed on this Signal chat, and those messages were met with celebration. Now, this is a very serious security slip. And who was responsible for it? Mike Waltz. After all, he was the one who added Goldberg to the chat.
Well, yeah, Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility, I would imagine. Had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike. But again, the attacks were unbelievably successful, and that's ultimately what you should be talking about, I think. No, Mike did. He took responsibility for it.
This escalated into a big controversy for the Trump administration, and that meant more headlines, something that Donald Trump does not like. He did not mind the mistake so much, but he really minded the bad PR. Reports suggest that Trump wanted to fire Waltz immediately, but his chief of staff suggested otherwise. A dismissal would implicate the administration. So they opted for a so-called soft landing. They have removed Mike Waltz as the National Security Advisor. They have appointed him as ambassador to the United Nations. Now, a small point to note here. This appointment needs the approval of the US Congress. The administration knows that it's very unlikely. The approval may not come. So Mike Waltz will be out, and Trump won't even have to fire him directly. It would be the perfect narrative.
So he wasn't let go. He is being made ambassador to the United Nations, which, of course, is a Senate-confirmed position. I think you can make a good argument that it's a promotion. But we brought Mike on to do some serious reforms of the National Security Council. He has done that. I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador as we get beyond this stage.
And what does Waltz have to say about this? Well, not very much. Signal got him into a bad position, but it looks like the former NSA cannot let go of it. He was pictured using it just a day before his ouster. Yes, old habits die hard. And while Mike Waltz was a direct change, there was another casualty this week. I'm talking about Elon Musk. Musk bragged about juggling a lot of hats. Tesla CEO, Doge chief, Trump's first buddy.
Elon, I love the double hat, by the way. He's the only one that can do that. Get away with it.
Well, Mr. President, you know, they say I wear a lot of hats. And as you can see, it's true. Even my hat has a hat.
But now it looks like Elon Musk just ghosted the White House.
There's not a good feedback
He
loop
packed his bags and bounced. Why? Because according to Elon, he does not need to be there. He claims that Doge is like Buddhism, and he's basically Buddha with a blue check mark. He may have left the building, but his Doge cuts will continue to move forward. Also, he's got a day job to get back to. He has to stop Tesla's plummeting sales.
Been a tremendous help. You opened up a lot of eyes as to what could be done, and we just want to thank you very much. And you know, you're invited to stay as long as you want. At some point, I guess he wants to get back home to his cars and his...
This is a textbook example of déjà vu. The first Trump administration was defined by churn. He had 4 national security advisors, 3 chiefs of staff, and 2 press secretaries, all in the first 2 years of his term. So the real question now is not who's next. It's who survives long enough to make it to the credits. Now let's focus on Australia, where more than 18 million citizens will head to the polls tomorrow. They will determine who the next Prime Minister will be, the incumbent Anthony Albanese of the centre-left Labour Party or his rival Peter Dutton of the conservative-leaning Liberal National Coalition. It is expected to be a tight race. According to recent polls, the Labour is in the lead, mostly thanks to their Trump card, quite literally. The opposition leader's likeness to the US president has earned him a crass nickname and a rating dip. Can he fight the so-called Trump slump in the upcoming election? Why is Trump's shadow looming over the Australian election? And what are the key issues on the ballot this time? Our next report tells you.
Australia has a famously unique electoral system. For starters, voting is mandatory for all citizens over 18. And voters don't just tick a box. They rank candidates in order of preference. That is, right after they pick up what's called a democracy sausage. It is a quirky election day custom, and this is exactly what the country will see in action tomorrow. Because more than 18 million Australians will head to the polls this Saturday to choose new members of the parliament and determine who the next Prime Minister will be. It is expected to be a tight race. Australia has two major parties: the left-leaning Australian Labor Party and the conservative Liberal National Coalition. The Labor Party's Anthony Albanese is running for re-election. He has been the Prime Minister since 2022 and a parliamentarian for almost 3 decades. He has enjoyed a period of popularity after coming to power. However, months before the polls, his ratings started to plummet over his handling of a range of affairs. First, the cost of living. Since the 2022 election, inflation has pushed up the prices of everyday essentials. Albanese has implemented policies to keep the cost of medications down. His government has offered tax cuts and energy rebates. But Australia has hiked interest rates 12 times since Albanese was elected. This has put pressure on borrowers. Add to this the second major issue. Housing is in bad shape. Australia is one of the least affordable housing markets in the world. These issues have shown Albanese in poor light, pushing up the ratings for his challenger Peter Dutton. Dutton became head of the Liberal National Coalition after the party's defeat in 2022, and he is contesting his first election as opposition leader. He has years of experience holding key portfolios such as defense and home affairs. He is known as a staunch conservative, and while he has been a controversial figure, he has given Albanese tough competition. That is, until the Trump effect came into play. As U.S. President Donald Trump disrupted the White House, he changed the world order and broke the foundations of Australian policies. Australia has a close strategic alliance with the U.S., but it also maintains a strong trading relationship with China, amid Trump's tariffs and his ongoing trade war with China. In recent weeks, Australia's election race has flipped on its head. The Labour has started leading in the polls again because of what looks a lot like the Canada effect. Canada went to polls this week. The Conservatives failed to win the national election. They were seen as soft on Trump, and critics call their candidate Trump Light. Meanwhile, Dutton, also a conservative, has an even worse nickname. He is called Temu Trump, referring to the Chinese website with a reputation for cheap copies. Dutton has a reputation of being an uncompromising strongman. He claims that Australia has too many migrants. He has been accused of stoking culture wars. He has called the nation's public broadcaster hate media. You get the gist. So in the run-up to the election, Temu Trump has spent most of his time distancing himself from Trump. But by now, he should know how hard it is to shake off a good name, and even harder to shake off the so-called Trump slump.
The CIA is on a recruitment drive. This is a US intelligence agency, and it has released 2 glossy videos on social media. They show people stuck in a lowly job working for a wealthy, corrupt official. And these videos are not in English. They're in Chinese, in Mandarin, because the target audience is not American. It is Chinese officials and workers, specifically members of the Chinese Communist Party, who the CIA hopes to turn against Beijing. This is an effort to recruit them as spies in China. And if this sounds absurd, let me tell you that these videos are part of a growing trend. Our next report has more.
Each video is like a mini movie, running for more than 2 minutes, complete with suspenseful music, plot lines and narration in Chinese language. This may surprise you, but these sleekly produced clips have been released by the CIA. This is a US intelligence agency. It has released 2 such videos on YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. These videos are part of the CIA's recruitment drive on social media to tap into disillusionment in China's vast bureaucracy and in turn boost efforts to recruit spies in China. More than a decade ago, China apparently dismantled the United States spy ring. It imprisoned or executed dozens of Chinese citizens suspected of spying for the United States. So now the CIA is trying to rebuild its spy network. It is ramping up intelligence gathering on Beijing, which is a top strategic rival to Washington. And there's nothing covert about this plan. The CIA top boss says, "No adversary in the history of our nation has presented a more formidable challenge or capable strategic competitor than the Chinese Communist Party. Our agency must continue responding to this threat with urgency, creativity and grit, and these videos are just one of the ways we are doing this." And indeed, the videos are creative. One video aims to appeal to senior members of the Communist Party who live in perpetual fear of President Xi's purge and his crackdown on so-called disloyalty. In the video, the narrator says, "As I rise within the party, I watch those above me get discarded like worn-out shoes. But now I realize that my fate is just as precarious as theirs." In another video, a growing sense of disenchantment among Chinese youth is captured. It shows the slowing economy, the lack of jobs, the toxic work culture, and despite the myriad struggles, a life of privilege and wealth seemingly out of reach. Both videos end with scenes of the protagonists contacting the CIA on their website to supposedly build on their own dream instead of following the hollow promises of their supreme leader. The US agency seems to have taken a page out of Xi's propaganda book to make its case. But this is part of a growing trend in the agency. Last October, the CIA released videos with instructions in Chinese, Farsi, and Korean. This was part of a drive to recruit informants in China, Iran, and North Korea. Earlier this year, it released videos in Russian to tap into elites who are unhappy with President Vladimir Putin. The agency has said that this drive proved to be successful. And now, the CIA is coming after its most serious military threat with even better produced videos. That said, China is on alert too. It has boosted efforts to root out foreign espionage. It has also launched a public campaign on social media warning citizens against spying by foreign nations. So the rival nations are fighting it out on social media with their not-so-secret espionage campaigns. And apparently, this is not just a test of loyalty, but also of production quality.
The year was 1972. The Soviet Union launched a spacecraft. It was meant to land on Venus. But it never made out of the Earth's orbit, and now, more than 50 years later, it is returning to Earth. And that may be an understatement. The spacecraft weighs 500 kilograms, and it is about to plunge uncontrolled back to Earth. Experts say, in all likelihood, it will crash down hard like a meteorite, and it'll happen next week. So should you be worried? Have other spacecraft crashed on Earth? Also, what about the tens of thousands of junk objects floating in space? What risks do they pose? Our next report tells you.
A spacecraft called Cosmos 482 was launched in 1972. It was launched by the Soviet Union as part of their Venera program. The spacecraft was meant to land on Venus and gather information about the planet, but it did no such thing. In fact, thanks to a rocket malfunction, Cosmos 482 never made it out of the Earth's orbit. So it has had more than 50 years good years in space. But now, it seems to be ready to make its return. Cosmos 482 may soon plunge uncontrolled back to Earth, and this is concerning news. The spacecraft weighs about 500 kilograms, and scientists say that it may crash on Earth, like a meteorite would, at the speed of about 242 kilometers per hour. It could happen around May the 10th, and it could re-enter anywhere as far north as London or Alberta in Canada, as south as America's Cape Horn. So should we be scared? Though it is not clear how much of it will come down, scientists say that it is quite possible that the spacecraft will survive re-entry. After all, it was built to withstand a descent through the thick atmosphere of Venus. So there are some risks. That said, there is not much to worry about. Most of our planet is water, so there are high chances of the spacecraft ending up in an ocean. Plus, because it is similar to a meteorite fall, the risks are just as high. Several meteorites fall on Earth each year, but it is rare for them to hit or harm someone. That said, this expectation of the spacecraft's crash raises other concerns, that of space debris, which refers to the man-made junk in space. This includes defunct satellites, spent rocket parts, and fragments from collisions. Over the past few years, the amount of space debris has increased dramatically. Around 46,000 objects are estimated to be orbiting Earth. It poses risks to satellites or space projects and the atmosphere. And while it is rare, there is a concern for safety of humans on Earth. For instance, earlier this year, a 500-kilogram ring of metal fell from space on a Kenyan village. It was left over from a rocket launch mission from 6 decades ago. Thankfully, its crash didn't hurt anyone. But if it had, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Last March, a big chunk of debris from the International Space Station tore a hole through the roof of a home in Florida. The following month, many sizable chunks of metal from a SpaceX capsule were found on a Canadian farm. So this problem is not limited to one country or one space mission. It is a global concern. And scientists are trying to come up with solutions, like designing some space parts for a shorter duration or monitoring older spacecraft for re-entry. But until there is a solution, the global mentality around space waste must change. Because what goes up might just come down.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A video of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney dancing after his election win goes viral. North Korea celebrates May Day with sports and games, and the Vatican prepares to select the next pope. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan. US Navy SEALs shot the Al-Qaeda founder in his compound in Pakistan's Abbottabad. The raid was approved by US President Barack Obama. Osama bin Laden's compound was just kilometers away from a Pakistani military academy. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.
leader.